The humidity in Atlanta didn't just hang in the air, it owned it. At 6:15 a.m. on a Sunday in late August, the heat was already a physical presence, pressing against the red brick of the Williams family home in Cascade Heights. Inside, the house smelled of starch, lavender Murphy oil soap, and the faint, lingering ghost of yesterday's fried catfish. Dana Williams stood at the mahogany dining table, a piece of furniture she had polished every Saturday for 42 years until her reflection looked back at her through a veil of wood grain. She was 65, with skin the color of well-steeped Earl Grey tea, and eyes that had spent 30 years de-escalating middle school food fights and convincing teenagers they were worth more than their zip codes. She was an educator, a pillar, a woman who knew how to hold her spine so straight it made other people feel slouchy. But today her hands were trembling just a fraction as she pressed the steam iron onto Elias's Sunday suit. Hiss! The steam rose, clouding her gold-rimmed spectacles. "Dana, is my tea ready?" The voice boomed from the hallway, resonant and practiced. It was a voice designed for the pulpit, for boardrooms, for telling people exactly where they stood with God and the IRS. "On the counter, Elias. Peppermint and honey, just the way you like it," Dana replied, her voice smooth as riverstone. Elias Williams stepped into the dining room, adjusting his silk tie. He was a handsome man at 67, silver-haired and sturdy, carrying the kind of unearned confidence that only comes to men who have never been told no by their community. As a senior deacon and a tax consultant, he was the man people went to when they were in trouble with their souls or their bank accounts. "The roof is leaking in the pantry again," Dana said softly, not looking up from the sleeve of his jacket. "I put a bucket under it last night during the storm. The contractor Michael suggested said it's a simple patch, but we need to do it before the fall rains." Elias took a slow, deliberate sip of his tea. He sighed, a sound of profound, weary patience. "Dana, we've talked about this. The markets are volatile. My consultancy has taken a hit this quarter, and the church's building fund is the priority right now. We have to live within our means. Sacrifice is a virtue, remember?" Dana felt a familiar tightening in her chest. For 4 decades, sacrifice had been her middle name. She had worn the same winter coat for 7 seasons. She'd skipped the dental implants she needed because Elias said they were vanity expenses. She'd watched him manage every cent of her pension, moving numbers on a screen she wasn't allowed to see. "I just don't want the ceiling to rot, Elias." "And I don't want us in the poorhouse," he snapped, his tone sharpening like a blade. Then, as quickly as the flash of anger appeared, it vanished, replaced by a patronizing smile. "Trust me, sugar. I'm handling the numbers. You just handle the Sunday school. You're so good at that." He patted her hand, the one that had worked 2 jobs when he was starting his firm, and walked toward the foyer. "I'm going to head to the church early to meet with the finance committee. Don't forget to bring my charcoal overcoat. The air conditioning in the sanctuary is acting up, and it gets drafty." "It's 85 degrees out, Elias." "My joints, Dana. My joints," he murmured, disappearing into the garage. Dana waited until the hum of his luxury SUV, the one thing he insisted was necessary for the image of the firm, faded down the driveway. She picked up the charcoal overcoat. It was heavy, wool blend, a relic of a trip to Chicago years ago. As she shook it out to check for lint, something felt off. The drape of the left interior breast pocket was heavy. A slight, stiff crinkle echoed as the fabric moved. Dana reached in. Her fingers brushed against something cold and metallic, a small velvet-lined box. Her heart leaped. Is it? After 40 years? She thought of the ruby necklace she'd pointed out in a window 3 years ago. She opened the box. It was empty. Confused, she felt deeper into the pocket, behind the lining where a small tear had formed. Her fingers snagged on a piece of paper. Not a greeting card, not a church flyer. She pulled it out. It was a folded cashier's check receipt. Dana sat down on the edge of the dining chair, the one Elias usually occupied. She unfolded the paper. The ink was fresh, the thermal paper still crisp. Pay to Montgomery Estates and Development. Amount $200,000. Memo, down payment. 4221 Wexford Lane. Date, August 14th, 2026. The room went silent. save for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. $200,000. A simple patch for the roof was $500, and he'd made her feel like a spendthrift for asking. She looked at the date. August 14th. That was the Friday he told her he was at a tax seminar in Savannah. He'd come home exhausted, complaining about the cost of the hotel breakfast. Dana didn't cry. The shock was too cold for tears. Instead, a memory surfaced. A name. Sienna Montgomery, the young, vibrant real estate agent who had joined the church's business league last year. Elias had mentored her. Helping a sister build her legacy, he'd called it. Dana stood up. She didn't go to the kitchen to start the Sunday roast. She didn't call her daughter Tasha, who would only scream, "I told you so," until Dana's head ached. She walked to the garage, climbed into her 10-year-old sedan, and plugged 4221 Wexford Lane into her GPS. The drive to the suburbs of North Atlanta took 35 minutes. The houses changed from the soulful, lived-in charm of Cascade to the sterile, towering McMansions of a new development. Gated entries, perfectly manicured lawns that looked like plastic. She found it. 4221, a modern farmhouse with black trim and a sprawling porch. And there, parked in the circular driveway, was Elias's SUV. Dana parked a house away, her breath coming in shallow hitches. She watched. The front door opened. A woman stepped out. Sienna Montgomery. She was wearing a silk robe, her hair wrapped in a colorful scarf, looking radiant and relaxed. She was followed by a small boy, maybe 7 years old. He was wearing a pint-sized Atlanta Braves jersey. Then came Elias. He wasn't wearing his deacon's scowl or his sacrifice frown. He was laughing. He picked the boy up, swinging him around in the air. The boy shrieked with joy, shouting, "Daddy, do it again!" Elias kissed Sienna on the cheek, a casual, intimate gesture of a man who was home. He looked at the house with the pride of a king. In her car, Dana gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. The leaky roof wasn't a lack of money. It was a choice. Her life, her 40 years of clipped coupons, postponed dreams, and starching his shirts, was the subsidy for this life. She looked at the receipt in her lap. The paper was small, but it felt like a mountain. Sacrifice is a virtue, remember? Dana shifted the car into reverse. She didn't storm the lawn. She didn't make a scene. She had been a principal for 30 years. She knew that you never catch a troublemaker until you have the evidence in writing and the witnesses in a row. As she drove back toward the city, passing the church where the bells were starting to ring for the morning service, Dana Williams felt something die inside her. The good wife was gone. The nurturer had left the building. She looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. "Elias," she whispered to the empty car, "you're about to find out exactly how much a volatile market can cost you." The sanctuary of Ebenezer Baptist was freezing. The air conditioning, which Elias had claimed was acting up, was actually blasting a clinical, bone-deep chill that made the floral hats of the front-row deacons' wives flutter like trapped butterflies. Dana sat in her usual pew, third row center. She was wearing her cream-colored Sunday dress, the one she'd altered herself 3 times to keep up with the changing hemlines of the decades. On her right sat Elias, his hand resting possessively on her knee, his thumb tracing small, rhythmic circles. To anyone else, it looked like a gesture of affection. To Dana, today, it felt like the heavy, gold-plated shackle of a jailer. She listened to the choir sing Amazing Grace, but the lyrics felt like ash in her mouth. Every time Elias leaned over to whisper a hallelujah, Dana smelled his expensive cologne, the one she'd bought him for Christmas, which he now wore to hug a woman named Sienna in a house that cost more than Dana's entire life's work. "You all right, sugar?" Elias whispered, his eyes never leaving the pastor. "You're shivering." "Just the draft, Elias," Dana replied, her voice a hollow reed. "Just like you said." He nodded, satisfied with his own foresight. He felt powerful. He felt managed. But as soon as the benediction was over and the amens faded into the rustle of Sunday bests, Dana didn't go to the foyer to shake hands with the visitors. She slipped out the side door, through the choir room, and into the basement kitchen. The kitchen was the heart of the church, a place of industrial-sized ovens and the permanent scent of cinnamon and bleached dishcloths. Waiting there were 3 women. They didn't need a phone call. They didn't need a text. They had seen Dana's face during the second hymn, and they knew that a storm had made landfall. The circle was ready. First was Beatrice B. Hayes, 72, a retired bank VP who could calculate compound interest in her sleep and knew where every forgotten dollar in Atlanta was buried. Next was Ruby Vaughn, 68, a former IT specialist for the city who still kept a decrypted laptop in her knitting bag. And finally, Clara May, 70, the church's longest-serving secretary, who knew everyone's secrets because she was the one who filed their prayer requests. "Close the door, Clara," Bea said, her voice like gravel. She didn't look up from the massive pot of collard greens she was stirring. Dana leaned against the stainless steel prep table. Her legs finally gave out, and she sank into a plastic chair. Without a word, she pulled the crumpled $200,000 receipt from her glove. Ruby put on her reading glasses. A low, sharp whistle escaped her teeth. "Lord have mercy. Montgomery Estates. That's that girl Sienna's firm." "He's got a son, Ruby," Dana whispered, the words finally breaking through the dam. "A 7-year-old boy. He calls him Daddy. He swings him in the air just like he used to swing Tasha before he got too busy with the firm." The kitchen went silent, save for the hum of the walk-in freezer. In the African-American community, the deacon with a second family was a trope everyone feared but no one talked about. It was the ultimate betrayal of the black excellence facade they had all worked so hard to maintain. 40 years, Dana choked out. "I saved his scraps. I wore thrift store shoes so he could have the right car for his clients. I thought we were building a legacy. I thought we were poor because he said we were righteous." Bea Hayes stopped stirring the greens. She walked over and put a heavy, steady hand on Dana's shoulder. "Dana, listen to me. Men like Elias don't just fall into this. They engineer it. He's a tax consultant. He knows how to hide the sun behind a dime. If he's got $200,000 for a down payment, he's got $1 million tucked away in the shadows." "He said the roof was too expensive," Dana laughed, a jagged, hysterical sound. $500 for a patch. He made me feel guilty for wanting a dry pantry." "Dry your eyes, Dana Williams," Ruby Vaughn snapped, though her eyes were kind. She pulled a sleek, silver laptop from a bag decorated with crocheted sunflowers. "Crying is for the victim. We're moving into the discovery phase." "What are you doing, Ruby?" Clara asked, peering over her shoulder. "Elias handles the church's building fund, right?" Ruby's fingers began to dance across the keys. "And he's the treasurer for the Sons of Abraham charity. He's always bragging about how he optimized the church's digital ledger. Well, I helped him set up that ledger back in 2018. He thinks I forgot the administrative backdoor password." Dana watched, mesmerized, as the screen filled with columns of numbers. "Is that legal?" "Is it legal to steal 40 years of a woman's life?" Bea countered. "Justice isn't always found in a courtroom, Dana. Sometimes it's found in the fine print." Ruby paused, her brow furrowing. "Wait a minute. Look at this. There's a recurring wire transfer every month to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. It's labeled General Maintenance. But look at the amount. It's exactly 15% of the church's weekly tithes." Dana felt the floor tilt. "He's stealing from the church? From the people who trust him?" "He's not just a cheat, Dana," Clara May whispered, crossing herself. "He's a thief in the temple." "This is bigger than a house on Wexford Lane," Bea said, her eyes narrowing. "This is a federal crime. If Elias gets caught by the IRS, they'll seize everything. The house, your car, your pension. You'll be a 65-year-old woman with nothing but the clothes on your back." Dana stood up, her spine regaining that iron rod stiffness. The principal was back. "What do I do, Bea? If I confront him, he'll move the money. He'll call me crazy. He's already told the kids I'm getting forgetful lately." "He's gaslighting you, sugar," Ruby said, clicking through a series of documents. "Setting the stage so if you ever found out, no one would believe you." But he made one mistake. He used his personal consultancy server to host Sienna Montgomery's business website. He's commingling funds. He's sloppy because he's arrogant. Bea leaned in close to Dana. "You have to go home. You have to starch his shirts. You have to cook that roast. You have to be the woman he thinks is too forgetful to find a receipt. while Ruby and I build a digital cage around him." "And Tasha?" Dana asked. "My daughter thinks I'm a doormat." "Don't tell Tasha yet," Bee warned. "She's a lawyer, and her ethics would force her to act too soon. We need the total sum of his sins. We need to find where the rest of the icebergs are." Dana took a deep breath. She reached out and took the hands of her sisters. They formed a small circle in the middle of the kitchen, surrounded by the smell of Sunday dinner. "Lord," Clara May prayed softly, "give Dana the strength of Esther. Give her the wisdom of Deborah. And Lord, give us the password to his private brokerage account." "Amen," they all whispered. Dana walked out of the church basement and into the bright Atlanta sun. She saw Elias standing by his SUV, laughing with the pastor. He looked like the picture of a godly man. He saw her and waved. "Ready to go, sugar? I'm starving for that roast." Dana smiled. It was a practiced, perfect smile, the kind she used to give parents she was about to expel their children. "I'm ready, Elias," she said, her voice steady. "I'm going to make you a dinner you'll never forget." As they drove home, Elias talked about the sermon, about loyalty, and the fruits of the Spirit. Dana listened, her hand clutching her purse. Inside was the receipt, but also something else. A small, high-capacity USB drive Ruby had pressed into her palm. "Everything he's ever hidden is on here," Ruby had whispered. "You just need to get into his study tonight and find the physical ledger he keeps in the floor safe. The digital trail is only half the story." Tonight, Dana realized, she wasn't just a wife. She was an undercover operative in her own home. The battle for the Williams legacy had officially begun. The Sunday roast sizzled in the oven, filling the Williams home with the scent of rosemary and deceptive peace. Dana moved through the kitchen with a grace that felt like a haunting. She had worn her workhorse apron, the one with the faded sunflowers, and kept her head down, just the way Elias liked it. "Smells like home, Dana," Elias shouted from his study. He was likely staring at his dual monitors, moving numbers like chess pieces. "Is the Cabernet breathing? Pastor Miller and his wife will be here in 20 minutes. "It's breathing, Elias," Dana whispered to the steam rising from the gravy. "And so am I, for the first time in 40 years. She reached into her apron pocket and felt the cold, hard plastic of the USB drive Ruby had given her. The mission was simple but terrifying. Elias kept a physical backup, a small black moleskin ledger, in a floor safe beneath his mahogany desk. Ruby's digital trail showed general maintenance transfers, but the ledger would contain the names, the real beneficiaries, the offshore codes. The doorbell rang. The Millers had arrived. Pastor Miller was a large man with a booming laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes, and his wife, Sister Mary, was the gossip gatekeeper of the parish. They were Elias's closest allies. "Dana, sister, you look rejuvenated," Mary said, eyeing Dana's sharp eyeliner. "Just the joy of the Lord, Mary," Dana smiled, ushering them into the dining room. The dinner was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Elias sat at the head of the table, carving the roast with the precision of a surgeon. He held court, complaining about the moral decay of the younger generation and the burden of managing the church's growing building fund. "It's a heavy cross to carry, Pastor," Elias sighed, pouring more wine. "Sometimes I worry the stress is getting to Dana, too. She's been misplacing things. Just the other day she thought she lost her wedding ring. Found it right on her nightstand." Dana's fork scraped against her china. He was lying. She hadn't lost her ring. He was seeding the forgetfulness narrative right in front of the pastor. He was building the dementia trap brick by brick. "Is that so, Dana?" Pastor Miller asked, his voice dripping with performative pity. "We must keep you in our prayers. Cognitive health is a gift." "I'm fine, Pastor," Dana said, her voice like silk over steel. "Actually, I've never seen things more clearly. Elias, darling, I forgot the mint jelly in the pantry. Could you grab it? My knees are a bit stiff today." Elias frowned. He hated being an errand boy, but in front of the pastor, he had to be the doting husband. "Of course, sugar. Stay seated." The moment his footsteps faded toward the kitchen, Dana leaned in. "Mary, I forgot to show you the new quilt pattern Beatrice Hayes sent me. It's in Elias's study on the printer. Would you mind? I'd love your opinion before dessert." "Oh, I'd love to see it," Mary squealed, standing up. Dana's heart hammered against her ribs. She needed Elias in the pantry, and Mary occupied with a fake quilt pattern so she could have 60 seconds alone in the study. Actually, Mary, it might be under a pile of papers. Let me just run and grab it so you don't have to hunt, Dana said, moving with a speed that defied her stiff knees. She slipped into the study. The air was colder here. She made a beeline for the desk. She knew the safe was under the rug. She kicked it aside. 14/22/40, their anniversary, the most cliché code in the world. The safe clicked open. Inside sat the black moleskin. She grabbed it, flipped to the back, and saw exactly what Ruby predicted. A list of account numbers under the name E. Junior Trust. She didn't have time to read. She pulled out her phone, silenced the shutter, and took 10 rapid-fire photos of the pages. Thump! A footstep in the hallway. Dana, what are you doing in here with the lights off? Elias stood in the doorway, the jar of mint jelly in his hand. His shadow stretched across the room like a dark shroud. His eyes were narrowed, scanning her position. Dana didn't flinch. She was holding a stack of colorful fabric swatches she'd hidden in her sleeve earlier. Just grabbing the quilt patterns for Mary, Elias. You know how she gets about her needlework. Elias stepped into the room. He looked at the rug. It was slightly ruffled. He looked at the safe, or rather the spot where it was hidden. Dana held her breath. If he moved 1 inch closer, he'd see the corner of the rug was folded back. You look flushed, Dana, he said, his voice dropping to that low, dangerous register. Are you sure you're feeling well? Maybe the forgetfulness is just the beginning of a fever. I'm perfectly fine, Elias, she said, walking right past him, her shoulder brushing his. Mary is waiting. Don't let the roast get cold. As she walked back into the dining room, she felt the weight of the photos on her phone. She had it. She had the proof that he wasn't just supporting a second family. He was diverting church tithes into a trust for a son the world didn't know existed. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. When the Millers finally left, Elias turned to her, his face a mask of cold indifference. Don't ever go into my study when I have guests again, Dana. It's unprofessional. People will think I can't keep my own house in order. Of course, Elias, she said, piling the dishes. It won't happen again. She waited until he went upstairs. She waited until she heard his heavy snores echoing through the vents. Then she retreated to the guest room, the room she'd started sleeping in because of her back. She pulled out her phone and sent the photos to Ruby Vaughn. 5 minutes later, a text flashed on the screen. Ruby, Dana, sit down. This isn't just a trust fund. These account numbers match the general maintenance wire transfers from the Ebenezer Building Fund. He's been donating to his own son using the congregation's money for 7 years. Total amount, $1.2 million. Dana leaned back against the headboard. $1.2 million. She thought of the women in the church who gave their widow's mite, the grandmothers who lived on Social Security but still put $20 in the plate every Sunday. Elias hadn't just stolen from her. He had stolen from the soul of the community. She looked out the window at the moon hanging over Atlanta. Elias Williams, she whispered, you wanted me to be forgetful, but I'm going to make sure the whole world remembers what you did. The twist. As Dana prepared to close her eyes, her phone buzzed again. An unknown number. Unknown. I saw your car at 4221 Wexford Lane today, Mrs. Williams. We need to talk. Sienna. The Silver Skillet Diner sat on the edge of Atlanta's Midtown, a place where time had been held hostage since 1967. The air was a thick curtain of onion grease, burnt decaf, and the rhythmic thwack slap of a ceiling fan that looked like it was struggling to stay attached to the nicotine-stained tiles. Dana Williams sat in the furthest corner booth, her back to the window. She wore oversized tortoiseshell sunglasses and a silk scarf knotted firmly at her throat, not for fashion, but to hide the fact that her pulse was visible in her neck, jumping like a trapped bird. Sienna Montgomery arrived 5 minutes late. She didn't look like the radiant, new-era woman Dana had seen at Wexford Lane. She was wrapped in a trench coat despite the humidity, her eyes tired and sunken beneath a heavy layer of concealer. She sat down across from Dana without a word of greeting. You shouldn't have come there, Mrs. Williams, Sienna opened, her voice raspy and thin. Elias has security cameras hidden in the birdhouses. He knows you were there. He knows exactly how long you stood at the edge of the driveway. Dana felt the blood in her veins turn to slush. Then why are you here? To deliver a warning from my husband? Sienna let out a dry, jagged laugh. She pushed a slim manila folder across the sticky laminate table toward Dana. I'm here because I realize that even with that house, and even with a son who carries the Williams name, I'm just another line item on his ledger. Just like you. Dana opened the folder. It wasn't a legal threat. It was a stack of real estate lease agreements. What is this? The Wexford Lane house. It's not in my name, Sienna whispered, leaning in so close Dana could smell her expensive floral perfume, the same one Elias had gifted Dana for their anniversary 3 years ago. It's owned by a shell company called Heaven's Gate Holdings. Elias is the sole director. He told me it was for tax optimization, but the truth is, it's a leash. If I cross him, he can have me and my son out on the street in 24 hours. My son, Elias Jr., he isn't even on the life insurance policy yet. Elias keeps forgetting to sign the paperwork. Dana looked at the younger woman. The white-hot rage she had nurtured for the other woman suddenly shifted into something more complex, the grim recognition shared between two prisoners of the same man. What has he told you about me? Dana asked. Her voice regained its principal authority. He said you were losing your grip. He said you were hemorrhaging the family assets into radical charities, and that he had to protect our son's future by diverting the funds. Sienna looked down at her coffee, untouched. But last night I overheard him on a burner phone. He's talking to a private medical consultant. He's preparing a petition to have you declared incompetent. He wants to move you to a long-term care facility in rural Georgia by the end of the month. Dana gripped the edge of the table. He wants to lock me away so he can marry you? No, Sienna looked up, her eyes wide with genuine terror. He wants to lock us both out. He's preparing to wire that $1.2 million, the church money, to a private bank in the Caymans that I don't have the codes for. Once you're in a facility and I'm no longer useful for his image, he's going to vanish. Elias doesn't love people, Mrs. Williams. He loves the power of the pivot. The twist. Dana realized Sienna hadn't come for forgiveness. She had come to propose an alliance of survival. Why should I trust you? Dana asked, cold as a winter morning. You've been in my husband's bed for 10 years. Because I have what your lawyer needs. Sienna pulled a micro SD card from her coat pocket. I'm an agent, Mrs. Williams. I know how to document a paper trail. I've recorded his private strategy meetings in the Wexford house for the last 6 months. He thinks I'm playing house. I'm actually playing insurance. Dana looked at the tiny piece of plastic. It was the silver bullet. Elias Jr. needs a father, Dana said softly. He needs a future where he isn't ashamed of his father's blood more, Sienna countered. You have the circle and the respect of the community. I have the digital keys to his kingdom. You want your dignity back? I want a life that isn't a rental. You decide. Dana stood up. She didn't shake Sienna's hand, but she gave a single, slow nod of acknowledgement. Meet me at Ebenezer Baptist this Wednesday night, Dana said. Elias will be in the deacons' board meeting. We're going to end this where it all began, in the house of the Lord. The air inside Ebenezer Baptist on Wednesday nights usually smelled of floor wax and old hymnals, but tonight it felt electric, as if a lightning strike were held in suspension. In the upstairs boardroom, the 12 deacons of the church, the 12 pillars, were gathered. At the head of the table sat Elias Williams, draped in a charcoal gray suit that cost more than some of the congregants made in a year. Brothers, Elias began, his voice a smooth, practiced baritone. We must finalize the general maintenance budget for the coming quarter. The building fund is strained. We may need to ask the sisters of the parish for another bake sale or a tithing drive. Downstairs in the darkened sanctuary, Dana Williams stood in the shadows of the pulpit. Beside her were Bea, Ruby, and Clara May. And standing slightly apart, draped in a black trench coat, was Sienna Montgomery. Is the feed ready, Ruby? Dana whispered. Ruby Vaughn tapped a final command into her tablet. The church's closed-circuit television system is now patched into the boardroom's projector. And just for good measure, I've started a private live stream on the church's official Facebook page. 200 people are already watching, Dana. They think it's a surprise prayer meeting. Dana took a breath that felt like drawing in cold iron. Do it. Upstairs, Elias was mid-sentence when the large projector screen behind him flickered to life. It didn't show the budget spreadsheets he had prepared. Instead, it showed a video. High definition. Night vision. The audio kicked in through the boardroom speakers and through every speaker in the sanctuary below. Don't worry about the audit, Sienna. Elias's voice filled the room. On the screen, he was sitting in the Wexford Lane living room, sipping scotch. I've moved another $50,000 from the Ebenezer Building Fund into the Junior Trust today. Those old biddies in the pews don't know a ledger from a grocery list. They think they're giving to God. They're giving to my son's Ivy League tuition. The deacons froze. Elias's face turned the color of ash. He lunged for the remote, but the screen stayed locked. The video cut to a series of bank statements, the Cayman pivot Ruby had uncovered, flashing side by side with the church's official tithing records. The numbers matched like a gruesome puzzle. "What is this blasphemy?" one of the older deacons roared, standing up. The boardroom door swung open. Dana Williams stepped inside. She wasn't the forgetful wife in the sunflower apron anymore. She was wearing a sharp black suit and a strand of pearls that caught the fluorescent light. Behind her stood Sienna, holding a sleeping Elias Jr. in her arms. "It's the truth, Elias," Dana said, her voice echoing through the silence. "The truth you thought you could bury under 40 years of my silence." Elias scrambled to his feet, his deacon mask cracking into a snarl. "Dana, you're sick. You're having an episode. Brothers, don't listen to her. She's been seeing a specialist for her memory. This is a fabrication. A hack." "The only thing that was hacked, Elias, was the faith of this community," Dana replied, stepping closer until she was at the head of the table. She laid the black moleskin ledger, the one she had photographed, right on top of his expensive leather briefcase. "The FBI is already in the parking lot, Elias," Dana said, her tone almost pitying. "B and I spent the last 48 hours with a forensic accountant from the IRS. It turns out, when you steal from a nonprofit and move it across state lines, they don't call it optimization. They call it a felony." Sienna stepped forward, her eyes wet but her chin high. "He's right about one thing, deacons. He did have a second family, but he didn't care about us either. He used my real estate firm to wash the church's money. He lied to me about his wife being a danger to herself, just so I'd stay quiet." Elias looked around the room. He saw the faces of the men he had led for decades, men who were now looking at him like he was a serpent in the garden. He looked at the screen, where the Facebook Live comments were scrolling so fast they were a blur of "Lord have mercy" and "arrest him now." "Dana," Elias whispered, his voice finally breaking. "Think about the children. Think about Tasha. You'll destroy the family name." "You already did that, Elias, when you put a price tag on our marriage," Dana said. She turned to the rest of the board. "Brothers, I suggest you call the police before he tries to optimize his way out of the back door." As the sirens began to wail in the distance, echoing through the streets of Cascade Heights, Dana didn't feel the dementia Elias had predicted. She felt a clarity so sharp it was almost painful. Elias was led out of the church in handcuffs, his head bowed, his charcoal suit wrinkled and shamed. The pillar had crumbled into dust. In the quiet of the empty sanctuary, Sienna looked at Dana. "What now?" Dana looked at the little boy in Sienna's arms, the boy who shared her husband's eyes. "Now? Now we make sure that child grows up knowing that his life wasn't a secret to be ashamed of. And we start by returning every cent of that money to the people it was stolen from." Dana walked out of the church. The Georgia air was still humid, but the weight on her chest was gone. She looked at her hands. They were steady. She wasn't a deacon's wife anymore. She was Dana Williams. And for the first time in 65 years, she was exactly who she was meant to be. 1 year later, the morning sun over Cascade Heights didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like an invitation. Dana Williams stood in the center of her new commercial kitchen, the air thick with the scent of browned butter, Madagascar vanilla, and success. The sign above the door, wrought in elegant gold leaf, read, "Dana's Legacy Bakery and Bistro." It wasn't a hobby project. It was the most popular brunch spot in Southwest Atlanta. Dana wasn't wearing a faded sunflower apron anymore. She wore a custom-tailored chef's coat with her name embroidered in silk thread. "Table 4 needs another round of those lemon lavender scones, Mama," a voice called out. Dana looked up and smiled. Tasha, her daughter, stood at the pass-through. The friction that had defined their relationship for a decade had vanished the night the handcuffs clicked on Elias's wrists. Tasha didn't see a doormat anymore. She saw a titan. "Coming right up, counselor," Dana winked. As Dana plated the scones, she glanced at a small, framed newspaper clipping on the wall. The headline from 6 months ago read, "Former deacon sentenced to 12 years for wire fraud and embezzlement." Elias's pivot had landed him in a federal correctional facility in Alabama. He spent his days in a gray jumpsuit, far away from silk ties and luxury SUVs. The Wexford Lane house had been seized and sold, the proceeds returning to the Ebenezer Building Fund. The church had even named the new community center after Dana, a tribute to the woman who saved their soul. The bell above the door chimed. Beatrice, Ruby, and Clara May walked in, looking like the queens of Atlanta in their Saturday brunch hats. "The circle is in the house," Ruby shouted, tapping her latest high-end tablet on the counter. "I just checked the reviews, Dana. You've got 5 stars across the board. People are driving all the way from Savannah for your peach cobbler." "Sit down, ladies. Your usual is on the house," Dana laughed. But then the door opened again, more quietly this time. Sienna Montgomery stepped in, holding the hand of Elias Jr. The boy was growing fast, his eyes bright and curious. The room went momentarily still. Some of the older church members in the corner booths whispered, but Dana didn't care. She walked around the counter and knelt to the boy's level. "Hello, little man. You ready for that giant chocolate chip cookie I promised?" The boy grinned. "Yes, Miss Dana." Sienna looked at Dana, a silent, profound thank you passing between them. Sienna had used the whistleblower reward money to start a small, honest consulting firm. She and Dana weren't best friends, but they were partners in a different kind of family, one built on truth rather than secrets. As Dana watched the boy run toward the display case, she felt a tap on her shoulder. It was Tasha. "You did it, Mom," Tasha whispered, her eyes misty. "You really did it." Dana looked around her shop, at the women who had supported her, the daughter who finally respected her, and the life she had built from the ashes of a 40-year lie. "I didn't just do it for me, Tasha," Dana said, taking her daughter's hand. "I did it so that when people hear the name Williams, they don't think of a man who stole in the dark. They think of a woman who stood in the light." Dana Williams took a deep breath, the scent of her own success filling her lungs. She looked at her reflection in the glass of the pastry case. Her skin was glowing. Her eyes were sharp. She had spent 43 years making herself small. She planned to spend the rest of her life taking up as much space as she wanted,